Hey everybody, welcome to the December 2021 LAPPG meeting. We are going to be doing the power of Fairlight and DaVinci Resolve 17 with Mary Plummer. I'm so excited to have Mary back. We're doing a lot of stuff in Resolve now. We do our editing and our coloring and our VFX, but let's also do audio. So Mary's here to show us some really cool features that are happening over in Fairlight. And welcome, Mary. And you can just hop on and turn your camera on when you have said thank you for the kind wishes, everybody, on the anniversary. And Mary, you can unmute yourself. And then I forgot to mention.
I'm going to mime it today. I thought I'd mime myself through an audio demo. That might be fun.
Hey, we're up for anything.
Okay.
So, right. Mary, we're going to be looking at some kind of cool things that are happening right now. Is that?
Yes, some cool things. And, Fairlight's come a long ways. I think the last time I did a real deep overview of Fairlight was way back in version 15. And I think a lot of people got excited and they're like, and then they tried it and said, well, I don't know if it's ready. Well, it's awesome right now. I mean, we have so much working, it's super exciting. So I'm going to do some screen share and I'm going to just dive into some of the everyday features that are super powerful, exciting for all types of workflows. And so I'm going to just show a little bit of a lot of things that you can all try out. If you're coming from an editorial background, there's so many features and things that you may be used to working with on a nonlinear editor that you can also do here, but there's also Pro Audio, full digital audio workstation, all of these things built in that take it to a whole different level. So just to start out, I'm going to come up to the workspace and just reset my UI layout just so you can see it. Now this particular timeline right now is just a single clip just to make this very easy for you to work with. And just so you know, I'm not using any external hardware right now, just a 3-button mouse and a keyboard. And then the other thing is everything I'm showing you is going to come in the free version of DaVinci Resolve right out of the box. The only thing that will not work in the free version is when I get to the end, if I show you a little bit with the Dolby Atmos integration. To work with Dolby Atmos, you will need the studio version. And in case you're wondering, the studio version of DaVinci Resolve is $299. That's it. One-time purchase, no updates. I mean, you update, but the updates are free. So. All right, so just looking at this, the default layout, what you see across the top is, of course, this is our monitoring panel up across the top where you can monitor your levels. I only have a single clip and a single track, so if I were to play this, you're going to see meters for only one element. If I come over here, that's one track. Here is my control room monitoring and my loudness controls. I can always see those right here in the monitoring. We also have a viewer of whatever our video output might be. If I go over to, if you're used to DaVinci Resolve, if you've worked with it at all, you know that we also have a full nonlinear editor right here on the edit page. And this is where, as you can see, there is my clip in the timeline. And this would be your standard editing where you might do your edit work. I'm going to jump back over to Fairlight and just show you it's the exact same timeline. The difference is now I'm focused only on the audio elements. Can I see the video? Yes, I can actually show my video tracks here. At the moment, I'm just keeping it simple. Now for navigation, you can see we have this ruler across the top, and I can change that ruler anytime. Right now, it's just, if I zoom in, you can just see that the time code is just hours, minutes, seconds, and frames, but I can also right-click and I can choose to show subframes if I wanted to. I can even choose to show samples. If I would rather include samples in there, you can absolutely show that. And I can even bring up a large time code window because some people really like their time code. There it is. And the time code window, which is really big, right? It's a floating window that I can put wherever I needed to. If I have separate monitors, I could move that around. And that will always reflect wherever my playhead happens to be and whatever time code increments I might want to show. I'm just going to go back to the standard hours, minutes, seconds frame. So that's just a very basic thing, but I just wanted to point out that for those of you who live by time code, yes, we have total control over that. Navigation is super easy. It's exactly what you might expect if you're using any kind of other software, but you can use things like your arrow keys to jump back and forth between clips. As you can see, I'm just jumping around. You can click, you can drag if you want to scrub back and forth. Those types of things are very typical that you might use. And something else that's handy, if you have a 3-button mouse with a middle scroller, you can use shortcut keys for easy zooming as well. So for example, I'm just going to select this track just so you can see this a little bit better. And wherever my playhead happens to be when I want to zoom in and out, I could use these right here across the top. You can see I have horizontal zoom, which will zoom in and out around my playhead, as you can see. I can also zoom vertically right there by just dragging that, but I can also use my 3-button mouse for that, so I can do it very smoothly. Shift-Z just fits it to the window, and if I use the Option key or Alt and my middle mouse scroller, as you can see, I can zoom in very quickly, very smooth if I happen to have a nice scroll wheel on my 3-button mouse, and with Shift I can make that much larger if I want. And that's something, if you have more tracks, it's even easier to work with. Just kind of pointing out just some of those very basic things. Obviously, there's more built in, and that's what I'm going to show you right now. Over here on the right, of course, is our mixer. The mixer is going to show you all of the tracks that you happen to have, all those different channels, buses, all of those types of things that you might want to work with. At this moment, I have a single track, so of course, that's all that's showing right here in my mixer. And anytime I have one of these tools, I can choose to show and hide them. Right there, my mixer is hiding. My meters are now hiding, and I'm only looking at my one clip in the timeline. So you can change that interface anytime to show just the parts that you're working with. Now, when you work with a clip, you also can get in there to that clip, and built in without any plugins or anything else, I can go in there and manipulate elements within that clip right here in the inspector. Obviously, you can adjust the volume. That's not anything miraculous, right? You can just adjust the volume here. I can also drag it just by dragging up and down. Very, very simple stuff. There's even keyboard shortcuts for that. You can adjust panning, you can change the pitch. You can even have, there's a 4-band EQ right there for every single clip. And that's with no plugins. That's just built in to every single clip. We also have in our mixer, as you can see, our mixer comes fully loaded too without having to use plugins or anything else. I've got my dynamics right here for every track. That includes your expander, gate, compression, and a limiter on every single channel automatically. I just have to turn them on and start working with them. I can do full automation on these, and all I need to do is just open that up and start working with it. We also have a 6-band EQ on every single track built in, so you can turn that on anytime and you can start working with that immediately or when you get closer to your mixing. And that's, like I said, just built right in, super easy to work with. And of course, you have your panning controls as well. You have your standard channel-based panning, and you can also do, I'm going to hold down the Alt key or Option key and double click this, and this will give you your 3D panning if you're working in one of the immersive formats. There you go, where you also have, you know, your front, back, up, down, as you can see, and left, right. So I'll go ahead and close that up. So that's just like very, very, very basic stuff that we have. So let's go in. I'm going to show you a little bit more. So that's just looking at a clip and playing it back. Let's go over. I'm going into the media pool over on this side. And here we have a media pool which lets you access media, lets you access timelines. It lets you work with things the same way you might on a nonlinear editor. I'm going back to the edit page. And if I'm over here and I look at my timelines, I'll look at them in list view. You'll see here's all my different timelines. Here I have different clips I might want to be looking at or working with or whatever I'm doing. I can see all those. This is on the edit side. Well, I have that same power over here in my digital audio workstation on the Fairlight page. And so I also can have multiple timelines where I can do sound design and different work, have different versions of things as I go. I can access clips and media, organize things with bins. So I have all kinds of power for organization and for creativity right here to store and work with it. So it's no longer one of those situations where you have one session, and if you need something from another session, you have to open up that session and you have to kind of copy things and paste them and blend them together. Here, I can have all kinds of timelines or sessions all within this one project. And you can even work collaboratively with other editors or other folks within the same project, that someone can be doing dialogue editing while someone else is doing sound design and sound effects mixing in the same project at the same time. So here I am looking at these timelines. I'm just going to open up our, let's go to this one right now. And just so you know, These timelines I'm working with in this particular version of the project is part of our tutorials that will be coming out shortly. We have a new set of updated tutorials for DaVinci Resolve 17 for all of the different pages, and those will be launching on our website soon. So just keep an eye out for those, and when they get in there, you will have all these different timelines, plus there'll be video tutorials showing a much slower, more relaxed version of the things that I'm showing you right here. This is more of a quick overview so that I can show you as much as I can cram in just a few minutes. So I opened up this timeline. Notice I can show and hide that media pool anytime I want to, just by showing and hiding. Other things that I can bring up from this left side of our toolbar, we have our effects, and this is where you can bring in your plugins, which I'll show you some of those shortly. DaVinci Resolve comes with some Fairlight plugins. We have over 20. I'm not even sure how many exactly we have, but these all come with the free version. They work on Mac or Windows. It does not matter which version you're using. So if you apply a plugin to a clip or a track in DaVinci Resolve on any system and then open it up on another system, it will just automatically work. Now, if you also have audio unit or VST effects, those will also work here. I happen to have a few VST effects on my system. As you can see, they're there. For this program that I'm doing tonight, I'm only going to work with the ones that come with DaVinci Resolve because we have a really nice set of Fairlight plugins that will do all kinds of things. Practical, for mixing. We also have creative sound design kind of plugins and also repair plugins as well. So I'll show you a little sampler of those. I'm going to hide that for a minute. And what I want to point out is just some basics with editing. We have a lot of different ways that you can work. When you've got a clip, right here, I'm just working with my standard arrow tool. As easy as you can imagine, I can grab any clip and I can move it around. Just as you would expect, just click and drag just to move something around. You can move it between tracks. But other things we can do is you can also edit things by just selecting it, and I can extend it. Notice that as I go to extend this, notice it shows me the waveform, the entire waveform. So I can see exactly where I'm extending something, exactly what's there, and I can even, of course, move my playhead down here and zoom in, right? And that way, as I zoom, maybe I just want to include this one word or these words. Notice how nicely you can look ahead to see which direction you're trimming, so you always know exactly what you're including or not including as you go. So those are very, as I mentioned, user-friendly. They just make it so nice when you have to get in there and do that kind of work. Well, also dialogue editing, those of you who are dialogue editors, we have a lot of different ways you can do that. If you have one of our control surfaces like this console, we have keys that are designed to really quickly be able to do your dialogue editing. We have our other control surfaces like our desktop console, which has the ability to do that. But it's also could not be easier to just do it yourself. And these are those things that you can actually dive in and try doing it immediately. Now, right here, I'm just going to show you, I'm going to create a new track. And some of the new things, there's all these little things that have been added as well for DaVinci Resolve 17 point. Each version, they keep throwing in more and more improvements. So in this case, we're at 0.4, 0.2, I believe. And for example, now, if I want to create one more track, previously, if I create a new track, it would just dump it to the bottom of my timeline. Well, now, if I have a track selected and I say add track, right here, I want to add a mono track. When I do that, it'll automatically just put it right below whatever track I happen to have selected. So that's one of those little added bonus elements, which I really like. Other little details that you might use on your own system, I'm going to rename this track instead of dialogue. I'm going to name this for a character. This one will be Emiliana. And then if I want to name the track below this one, all I have to do is press the tab key. You may be familiar with that on other software. You can do that here too. So depending on what you use, you probably already know how to use a lot of these things. And some of it, if it looks really easy, that's because it is. Audio does not have to be a dark art. Audio does not have to be complicated. Don't tell everyone. Job security here. No, it's just, you just got to get in there and try it out, right? So I've selected that. This is Philip's track. There we go. And I'm ready to go. I want to do some stuff. Now, before I split these off, and I'm just going to show you really quickly how to move a couple of these clips around to different tracks. As you know, typically when you're working with even interview footage, it's always best to put people's voices. Everyone gets their own track. If Woody, Woody, and I are all having an interview, we would take each of our voices and put them on their own track. That way, our EQ and any compression, anything we need to do to improve that voice or sweeten that voice will be applied to that specific track for that person. And in this case, I've got these two things set up. But one other thing, this came from editorial. I noticed that there's all kinds of some leveling and some keyframes are on here. It looks like there's a plugin right there applied. So I just want to wipe all that off. And so I'm just going to select it all, right click, and remove attributes. In this case, these are attributes that have been applied to that particular clip or those clips. And at this moment, I have choices of what I want to remove. I can change the volume changes, plugins, any plugins that were applied, and also any EQ that might have been applied to that. I'll just say everything. Apply, and now everything's clean again. So, for those of you who are audio artists or audio editors or anything else, you don't necessarily want to take all the work that an editing assistant, a video editing assistant might have done. I'm sure it sounds great. In fact, I'll keep a copy of everything they did and I'll listen to it to understand where they were coming from. But it's just like if you're a makeup artist, you don't put makeup on top of someone's makeup. You start with a clean slate. Same thing here. So we want to clean all that up. And now that everything is back to the levels they should be, is where we start. Our starting point is I wanted to show you how easily I can move a few things around. And so moving things around, super easy again. I can just select a track. And this is, again, the Fairlight way of doing things. And by the way, let me bring up, I'm going to hide my mixer, don't need that. Bring up my meters so that I can see my viewer. As you can see, there's my viewer. I can even make my viewer bigger if I wanted to. You can hide tracks you don't want if you'd like. I can even break my viewer out and hide my meters. And now I'm only seeing my viewer, right? And if I have two monitors, I can set my viewer as a clean feed and it will go full screen to my extra monitor if I wanted to. And that way I don't even need to have it on my screen if I like. And in this case, if I just want to move something around, here's some dialogue right here. Notice that if I have a track selected and I start playing, anytime I'm over a clip, it automatically selects that. And then the editing part is so simple. I can just use the same cut, copy, and paste shortcuts that I would use on a word processor. So in this case, I want to cut this clip. I'm just going to Command X to cut that. I'd like to move it down a track. I can use shortcuts for that too. In this case, Option and Command down arrow. And that moves it down a track. I can paste it, I can move back up a track, and I can move on to the next clip by using my up and down arrows. And as you can see, I can very easily move down the timeline, go from clip to clip, and I can very quickly find who's speaking. That's Philip again. I can cut that, move it down, I can paste it, I can move back up, move to the next clip, and so on. And so I can go through there and very, very quickly checkerboard this out into, we call it a checkerboard edit, right? Because that would have all of that set up. And so here we go. Here is the same thing. It's been checkerboarded. Only thing different is I added some color to the different tracks. Now, once they're there, we need to balance those out. And that's one of those tools that we also have an abundance of, right? How do we want to balance out those levels? We need to find some decent levels for those. Now you can use your ears, you can use meters. And by the way, there are meters everywhere on the Fairlight page. So depending on where you like to look, let's show some meters, shall we? Here's my mixer, there's my monitoring panel. Look over here on the left, in the left side of my Emiliana's track right here, and you'll see that there are some meters sitting right there. Now I can tell immediately that these levels are low a couple ways. They look low, right? The waveform's not very big. That's one giveaway for me. I'll go ahead and pop this back into the monitoring panel. But something else, and let me just zoom in on this a little bit more, using those shortcuts I've already shown you, is something else that lets me think that this is a little bit low is just looking at these meters. They're all in the green, and a nice healthy level should be up closer into the yellow. Red would be too loud. Those are just very easy visuals that you can work with. And as you can see, just scrubbing across this, even if it's muted, I just muted my playback, you can see that I can tell these levels are too low. So I can manually go through and I can try to raise those levels. And those are just those basic things that you can do, just by selecting something and adjusting the levels. You can loop playback just like you might on other software by clicking this button. Now it's set for looping. I can mark that clip. These are all just tools, right? I can start looped playback so I can see it. I have it muted right now. And I'm checking those levels while it's muted even. and I can make sure that I get those levels where I want. We even have plugins to help with balancing out these levels, just to give you one more meter. Let's just say you don't have enough meters between here, here, and here, and you want to see it even more specifically. Let's go in here to our effects, and one of our effects is a meter. So now when you come to plugins, you can add unlimited plugins, whether they're VSTs or your own, or the Fairlight plugins. You can have unlimited plugins on a clip, and then you can have however many plugins, up to 6 on a track. And so I'm just going to drop this meter right on the track itself. And that way, there it is, my new Emiliana meter. And what that's going to do is show me those levels for this track. And as you can see, I have a really nice big meter now that's going to show me the sample peak program level right there as I go through here and figure this out. I could then go to the next clip and do the same thing. So that's one example, one plugin. I'm going to hide the effects, move this over here. And of course, I could go down through that whole track now. I have a nice little cheat sheet of where and what I want my levels to be. I can even use shortcuts. I'm going to select this clip, and I could start loop playback. And if I have that clip selected, I can even raise the levels. I'm actually raising the volume level right now by using Option Command and the equals and minus. Notice that I can raise that level up. Now, normally I do it while I was listening, so I can loop playback and listen. And again, some of you guys are going, well, yeah, I already know how to do that. So that's maybe it's not magic for you, but I hope you can see that if it's something you're used to using on another DAW, yes, you can do that here as well. And these are just little things built in that make life a little bit easier. Let's look over at our mixer for a second. You notice there's that meter plugin. What if I wanted to put that plugin on a different track? Let's say I want to move that over. Well, I can easily just drag it to another track, and now it's ready for whoever else or whatever the next one is I'm working with. I can also option drag and copy it to another track as well. So that's something kind of new that we're able to do. And if I want to delete it off the track, I can do that too. I just come over here to this little menu and delete, and it's done. Okay, so that's just, again, getting in there and playing around with those, and it's as easy as you might have thought. That's how you would do it. And when it comes to adjusting levels that are a little more complicated, let's look at, let's look at this clip right here. I'm going to just zoom in on this one. Maybe not that much. Select the track. Okay, this is Philip. So obviously the levels vary quite a bit on this particular track. And one of the cool things is easy to set keyframes. I could do that with my arrow tool, or I could do that with my range tool. It doesn't matter. Setting keyframes, you just hold down the option key and click on that line. And now I can raise or lower the levels, as you can see. Very easy to adjust those levels. There's nothing magical to that either. I'm going to set some more random keyframes for you, because I also want to show you another tool that we have. Okay, so again, I'm just adjusting maybe a little bit here and there. This is, again, just showing you how you can set keyframes just by holding the Option key or Alt. But also we have, I showed you the arrow tool, which is standard for selecting and trimming or anything else. We have the range tool, which lets you select entire clips. It automatically marks them with in and out points so that you can loop a range. You can also draw a little range on that if you want to. But the other tool that we have is this one right here. This one's newer. This was not around in DaVinci Resolve 15. This came in right at the end of 16 going into DaVinci Resolve 17. And as you can see, it's called Edit Selection Mode. You get your little I-beam there. It's flashing right now. And what makes this one different is this may be similar to some kind of a multi-purpose-y kind of tool that you may use on other software, in the sense that I can click anywhere I want to, and wherever I click, it's going to start playback at that spot. You know, normally you have to click into the ruler. In this case, I can click anywhere and automatically it starts playback right there. You can also click and drag a range very easily, a playback region. There it is. And then, of course, you can do your editing from there. A lot of other features you can do with that. I'm going to come back into this one clip just by selecting the lower half, zooming in on that so you can see a little better. And something else that's really nice by using the edit selection tool is, watch this, I'm going to select this little range, and let's say I want to adjust the volume level. I don't even have to set keyframes. I just have to grab on the bar, the volume bar, and it will automatically set keyframes. Can you see those? Let's see. It'll automatically set them around where I'm working, so I don't even have to set them. It's just done. And it will also gang any of my keyframes. So let's say, hypothetically, all of these are set exactly the way I want them. from here all the way to there. These are all set exactly the way I want them to go. Can you all see those? Well, now, because I select them with my edit selection tool, if I were to raise or lower these, notice that it just ganged all of those keyframes together so I can modify those very easily without needing to do anything else. And when I'm finished, I can just click off of that. So there's so many features that are built in with that edit selection mode. I'm not going to get into all of them right now, but like I said, if you're used to working with selections where you can jump to the next clip, the next track, and all of those different types of things, it's all right here on this particular tool. I'll go back to the arrow tool for now. One other thing I'll show you when it comes to balancing out your levels is, of course, normalization. And I realize normalization is sort of like the auto white balance, right, of when you're doing color grading. Well, for audio, of course, normalization is definitely a cheat, but I'm going to go ahead and just adjust some of these levels and make them a little more crazy here just for this example. So obviously some of them are way too low and some of them are obviously too loud. But I wanted to point out that I could select any given clip, right click, and anytime you right click, we have contextual menus all over the place when you're working in Resolve, so that wherever you happen to be, you can get different results, right, depending on where you click. Well, in this case, if I go down to this clip and just right click on it, let me zoom in a little bit more on that clip. Okay, I'm going to right click on the middle of that clip, and one of the choices I have right here is normalize audio levels. Okay, so I'm going to bring that up. I know it's a cheat. There's moments though that this is very useful, especially if you're doing QC work, which we'll get to, or delivery. But right now, normalization mode, it's just sample program peak is what it's going to show me. The target level is -9. And why would we use -9 as a default? Well, if you want your levels average to be around -12, then in theory, if the peaks are at -9, then it's probably going to sit right where you want it, right in that nice yellow zone I mentioned earlier, right? And that's decibels full scale. So if I were to normalize this to that level, there you go, it's been normalized to that level. And if I drag across that, you'll see that the levels are nice and yellow. I could take this off and actually play it for you. I'm sparing you of all that.
Emiliana Newton.
There you go. So there's that level right there where we want it. Well, with normalization, that was one clip, but I can also do this entire set of clips at the same time. Just right click, go back to normalize audio levels. And there you go. So again, it's at my sample program peak, but I have two choices when I have multiple clips. One of them is relative, which will treat them as if they are one clip, and it will find the highest peak of that one clip, lower that, and everything else will be lowered relative to that. Or independently. In this case, I want independent, so we'll look at each one separately. I click normalize and done. Okay. And again, it's just as if you were using auto white balance to kind of get your color to the right point because you're in a hurry and someone just came in the room and you need to make sure it's good enough to show them, or some scenario like that. So that is one thing with our normalization, but just to take it one step further, I will show you this now and show it to you again later, is if I were to right click and show you normalizing audio levels, I was just showing you the sample program peak and we were looking at individual clips. But if you look at this menu, you will also see we can look at true peak. So if you have a finished master and you just need to check the true peak, or you need to lower the true peak to a certain amount, you can totally set that and say, I need to make sure my true peak is at -2. There you go. And it will do that for me. There's also different loudness standards that you can come up to. And there's even a Netflix preset, which again, on these individual clips isn't going to mean a whole lot. But if you're getting to making masters for, if you're delivering Dolby Atmos masters or down mixes or final deliverables, and they need to meet Netflix standards right here, this is something you can use to check your masters, which is very helpful. And of course, you also have your standards as well. Okay. So a lot you can do right there with the normalization. Again, that's built right into the system. So let's keep going. There's more. So that was just showing you a little bit with editing and a little bit of those different things. Also, let's look at this bottom clip. If you notice in this timeline, you'll see I'm going to actually delete some of this. I have this all-purpose drone track here at the bottom. I'm going to just solo that so you can hear it. Early on, if you've done some editorial and you just need to cover up all the bad stuff until you get a chance to fix it, of course, a drone is always a nice go-to ambience, especially in space, right? So there's my drone. Well, just want to point out, when you're editing, let's go to this timeline menu. When you're editing, our default is going to be to overwrite edit, which means I don't have enough drone to cover this whole scene. So maybe I want to just option drag and copy this, right? So I have a second one. Good idea. But I might not want to stick them together. Maybe I want to overlap those, right? And if I want to overlap these, that's great. But if I let go, the default is to overwrite it, meaning replace it with something else. And so sure enough, if I pull this apart, you'll notice there's nothing underneath it. So I'm not creating a crossfade. I'm not blending those two things together. I just truncated one with the other. Depending on what software you work with, everybody's usually have an option to either truncate or overwrite or to overlap. So I'm going to undo that. And instead, I'm going to go outside the default to the timeline menu and go to where it says layered audio editing. You all see that? Layered audio editing. If you turn that on, and once it's on, as you can see. Once that's on, now I'm overlapping these things, and I'd like to see it even bigger. So guess what? Let's select that, and let's make this bigger. There you go. You should be able to see that pretty well at this moment, yes? And so what's great about this is when you're working with layers, you can also overlap things and actually see those waveforms. As I overlap them, see how I can actually see those waveforms? Pretty cool. I wish I could make them bigger without making them louder. I can totally do that too. That's all a shortcut thing. Middle mouse scroller, shift and command together, and I should be able to, no, it's actually, option and command. My fault, alt and command. I just do things by default and actually look at them that often. So there you go. So I can see I made it bigger, but not louder, just bigger. There it is. So the only reason I was doing that was because now as I overlap them, I can try to line up some of those waveforms a little bit better, maybe not, but it just gives you that option, right? And then of course you can reset that anytime, reset your track zoom as needed. But what's great is as I overlap them, I can line them up. This is great if you're going from one piece of music to another and you want to try to work with those musical phrases, or you're trying to line up a new take of dialogue and you're trying to match it up as best as possible. Being able to see the other waveform in transparency is great. Notice I'm fighting it a little bit because I have snapping turned on. So this little magnet here is just snapping. That just means it's trying to snap to other clips or markers or the playhead. By turning that off, I can now move this around. I can zoom in as much as I want. Let's zoom in a lot. I can zoom in more, and I can move this at the sample or at the subframe level and really overlap this and find an exact place where I want to line up those peaks. And let's just say that's the magic right there. Yes. Now, the other thing is every single clip has fades, so I can just drag right here, and now I just created a crossfade between those two overlapping takes. Okay? And these are layers. You always have layers. So if you record, you have multiple layers. If I do it this way, I have layers as well. See? There's my different. I can change the power of my zoom, and I can go over here really quickly and go to the view menu, and I can show there's my track layers. You can see there's one clip on top of the other. Okay, I will go turn off my audio track layers. And I'm going to show you a couple of repairs really quickly, more of our plugins, because I know that's something a lot of people need. Let's just bring this back. And so that was just one thing. Now we also even have batch fades. So let's say we wanted to throw micro fades on all of these. We just wanted to really quickly fade these. You can get to those too. Those are right there in the Fairlight menu. And right here you'll see batch fade settings. That's new. And when you bring this up, this allows you to choose, what am I going to use for my batch fades? I want to do a fade ins, fade outs on everything that I select, let's say. And you can choose frames or milliseconds, and then you'll have either of those to work with. You can choose to overwrite existing fades if you want to. You can choose the shape of those fades. And then once you do that, I can set a range, and I can just instantly come up here. I can even set a keyboard shortcut for these and apply batch fades, and it will apply them to that whole set, all of my dialogue edit at once, instead of going in there and manually adjusting those. So that's very helpful. I keep mentioning keyboard shortcuts. You look at these menus, there's so many different things in those menus, and I can keyboard shortcut any of them that don't already have a shortcut by just going over here to DaVinci Resolve menu, go down to our keyboard customization, and here I can look through the different Fairlight elements, things I want to work with. I can search for something, I can immediately assign a keyboard shortcut, and there it is. And if you're used to working with other software, there are some presets available. As you can see, we have a couple of different ones set up automatically if that's what you need to use when you're working. If you want to use the Fairlight shortcuts, the way that they're designed in the documentation, the tutorials, then you want to make sure you're on the default for the Fairlight page and for DaVinci Resolve. So those are some quick things. Now let me just show you a couple other tools. I know I don't have a ton of time before questions, so I'll go fast. Here's our ADR tool set. Now I'm going to change my timeline to an ADR timeline that I have, which I can see easier. I just have way too many timelines here. Let me go into the media pool for just a second. I can find it there easier. And my ADR timeline is down here. There it is, ADR start. Okay, and ADR is dialog replacement. We can do that for Foley or for dialog replacement very easily. You just go to this tool set. Everything is built in. Again, I don't need plugins. I don't have to do anything special. All I have to do is open the tool set, and there it is. And from here, I can go to my setup, and I can choose, let's say, 6 seconds preset, pre-roll, and 2 seconds post-roll is plenty. I want to record a little take right here. Let's do this Emiliana clip right here. Let's say I want to re-record her voice in this particular case. I can set that cue up very simply. You can also add characters. I mean, all those things are right here in the setup. So you can choose what track to record to. In this case, I'll record to this ADR track. I can choose what my record source is. I'm going to mute this because it's going to arm that track as soon as I choose a mic. I'm going to choose to use the same mic that I'm using for this Zoom, so it's just armed it. I muted it so that I'm not feeding back. And let's come down here. I can even add characters. Let's add a character. There's Philip. Okay, now we have Philip in here. One of the things about ADR is you need to be able to cue the talent, right? They're sitting in another room and they've got their headsets or they're watching the screen and they need to know when to speak. You can do all of that right here. You've got beeps to your endpoint. And as you can see, that's already set up. It's right now set to 3 beeps by default. Of course, you can have more beeps. Depends on the talent, right? But 3 would give you that kind of 3, 2, 1, and then get ready to go sort of thing. Beep to at the endpoint. There it is. I'm going to have a count in. I'd like a count in. So my count in is going to be 3 to 0. Of course, if somebody says, oh, I only do it if I have 7 count, well, then give them a 7 count. Make sure you have enough pre-roll. Talent's fun, right? So, and especially with ADR, everyone's got their way of doing things. Video streamer, you're going to get a nice streamer that'll let you know when it's time to record. And we also have our on-screen cue text, so you can actually adjust that. You can adjust the font and the size. Right now the size is kind of small. I'm going to just make it bigger because I can. There we go. And I'll make it a smart timeline, which is basically going to zoom in around my cues as I go. If you want to set a cue, it is so easy. First, you find a clip.
Identify the person on the med lab.
Figure out what they say. You can mark an in point, I for in, O for out. You can even use one of our tools to quickly mark an in and an out point. But I know what it is I need to mark. And just by marking that, I come over here and click New Cue. Done. I have a cue. It's ready to go. What's my character is Emiliana. And what did she say?
Identify the person on the med lab.
She says, identify the person on the med lab. Done. So I just did a cue. Now, could I go through there and do lots of cues? Of course I could. But at this moment, I'm doing 1 cue. And I could go through there. And here's what's really awesome about our ADR toolset. It's free. It comes with DaVinci Resolve. It can be used for your Foley sound effects, footsteps, whatever it is you're doing. You can mark all of those in there, set them all up. And I'm actually going to import an entire cue list. But here's what's great about this. This list, it's a CSV file. That's all it is. I'm going to come over here and show you right here, comma-separated variable spreadsheet program file is all this is. So someone could give you one of these that they've already created. Here's the file, right? So someone could give you this file if they needed to. You can also create it on a laptop, on an airplane, in a hotel, on the set, anywhere. You can have somebody helping you, an assistant, make this list by just going down through here, marking and setting your cues. It's that simple. And then you can just import it. There you go, import the cue list. And I'll just grab that one that was sitting there on my desktop, because all good things are on the desktop, of course. There it is. It's going to let you see, did they do it right? Because in case your assistant might have mixed things up, you can check to make sure the columns are right. Import done. I now have the cues for this entire scene or this entire show. Identify the person on the med lab. There is that cue that I was actually going to record. I found it again, and I can come over here to record. You can practice it once and you can actually record. Now, because this is Zoom, you're not going to see this in all of its glory, but when I do this, when I record this, you will see that it actually plays on the screen right here, and you'll see the cue. I could go to full screen mode by just Command F, and that's going to give you a full screen view of it. However, like I said, usually on Zoom, this is a little stuttered, but I'm going to hit record. Actually, I would rehearse this, but let's just go for it. It's going to be bad anyway, so I'll do this one.
Ada, identify the person I'm speaking with.
Philip Maida.
Identify the person on the med lab. Okay. I just did that one. I kind of made it. That was pretty good, sort of. Okay, it was awful, but I just recorded. That's one take. Notice the take shows up here. And as long as I'm in a live session, those takes will just show up right here. I'm going to record another one right on top of that. Again, super easy. All I have to do is just hit record. But this time, I'm going to tell it to keep recording. Because what if I miss my mark? It's going to cut it off exactly where those marks were. So if I say keep recording, it will let it keep rolling until I stop it. So let's do another one.
Ada, identify the person I'm speaking with.
Philip Maida.
Identify the person on the med lab.
Philip Maida.
Okay, and I just stopped it myself manually this time, and as you can see, there's that second take. Now the takes are all sitting in the same track. They're both sitting in the same exact track. I could have as many takes as I need to, and if I want to play them back, watch. Can you all see this right here? Watch it. Right now, I'm looking at take 2. That one's on top. If I show my audio track layer, wrong thing. Let's try that again. If I show my audio track layers, you'll see there's one sitting on top of the other, as promised, right? I'm going to turn that off. And instead, what I want to do is just show you, I could choose one of these takes. I want to look at take 1. And if I look at take 1 and click play, what it will do is it's hiding the other one.
The person I'm speaking with.
Okay, so I don't even see it. It only shows the take I'm actually choosing as long as this is a live session. Now, once I close this timeline or I save and close out of this, these takes will still be here, but I won't have the ability to preview those. If I just had some finished stems, for example, right here I have, let's say, a stereo mix of my finished show, and I just need to check those levels. Remember I mentioned we have loudness meters up here. In our loudness meters, we might want to check those. I can have my media pool. We might want to change that standard, let's say to Netflix. You know, Netflix standards, they're a little bit different. If I solo this track and if I want to just look at that and play it back, I could play the entire thing and watch, reset this and make sure that that's correct. You can also look at it as a graph. But the other thing we can do is we can come back in here. Remember I said we had our normalization? Well, above that, we also have analyze audio levels. So this is an offline check that you can do on your 5.1 stems or your stereo stems. And I can just analyze those audio levels, and it's going to analyze just that one particular clip. And I'm going to be able to check that right here for Netflix standards. Let's just see how we're doing on that one. It's either going to be up to snuff or it's not. And as you can see, this one actually is within tolerance, which is great. If it was not within tolerance, that means the true peak is low enough. And also, if it's yellow, that means it's within tolerance. It's within the specs for Netflix, which is fantastic. If it wasn't, which can happen, right? Let's say if it was off and I ran it, and if it was too loud, I can always go in there and say normalize audio levels and choose what standard I need to normalize it to. In this case, Netflix. And Netflix target is going to be -2 decibels true peak and -27 LKFS. Normalize that. And there we go. And then, of course, because I normalized it, now if I ran the analysis, of course, I know it's going to fit because I just did that, right? So again, these are just some of those tools, but all of your mixing, and I have separate sessions that you'll be able to find online and for the tutorials on working with our Dolby Atmos tools. As you can see, this one's right on the money, which is exactly where we needed it to be. But Fairlight has so much built in that I'd love for you to get to work with, including like if you're using RX, Isotope RX, and that's something you want to be able to work with within DaVinci Resolve, you can totally do that as well on the Fairlight page.
Monica patiently asked about a half an hour ago, can the software be controlled with the speed editor?
That's a great question. I believe it didn't used to work well with that. I think the transport controls work with that, and I think the in and out marks work with that. I don't know how deep the integration is with those at this moment, but I know that in the latest version, like DaVinci Resolve 17.4, whatever, they have definitely added more functionality to it. So it's worth trying, but obviously it's not going to be the same as if you're using one of the edit controllers.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Mary. Always a pleasure. And you got amazing feedback in our chat, how much people love your style of presenting. So thank you so much for all of that. And on our LAPPG YouTube channel, we have a brand new one up from our October meeting with Dave Bach, who he was a dialogue editor on a lot of amazing films, including Dune and Dunkirk. Recently, King Richard, which Woody and I just both saw that, and we both really liked it, so we recommend that. And Suicide Squad, I know he worked on that one. So he shows us RX-9. It was the day that it was released to the world, so that's super exciting. Isotope chose LAPPG to showcase it at. And you can find out like all the new updates that they did to the program. You definitely will learn a lot from watching that video. And we have over 70 others, so please check it out on our YouTube channel and subscribe. And that way, if you click the bell, they'll let you know every time we drop a new video. And also, if you find yourself on the LAPPG website, check out our blog. We have a Meet series, and this month we met Adrian Gonzalez, who talks to us about virtual sets. It's a great conversation with him. He talks about the benefits of virtual sets. He talks about sort of some differences between green screen and virtual sets, as well as what's on the horizon, and also how Mystica Boutique can be used to accomplish all these things. So definitely check that out. That's at lappg.com/blog. And be sure to connect with us on Instagram. We're also on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn. And a huge thank you to our partners. At the gold level, we have Adobe and Blackmagic Design, OWC and Zeiss. And then at the silver level, AJ Video Systems, Isotope, SGO, and Reduct. And it takes a village. We have a lot of other companies that are supporters and media and community members. So these companies are great supporters as well. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks, Mary, and thanks, Blackmagic.